Well, welcome to my drive home. This is Peter from Sydney in Australia. I'm now sitting in traffic like everybody else does around the world, which is pretty amazing, isn't it? I'm now travelling down the M4. I'm going home to Windsor. It's probably going to take me an hour or so. So I'm going to have a little chat with you while I'm driving home. So this video is probably going to go for an hour or 2 hours. So if you're sick of it already, bunk out and bugger off. Oh, you might go, oh, I can't be bored with that. So I want to talk to you a little bit about Australia for all those people that want to come visit, would like to come live here. Okay, Australia with the indigenous people goes back millions of years. So the traditional people of Australia are called Aborigines, and they have a culture going, like I said, going back from what they have passed down. There is no written records. They say it goes back millions of years, which you have to respect and believe, right? Well, Abel Tasman from Holland was the first to discover Australia. That was back in the days when they thought the world was flat, and the great explorers used to go out in their old wooden boats with their sails, the big sailing ships, and travel around the world and try to prove that the philosophers were idiots and the world was round. Well, he came down, and I don't think, I have to read up myself, I don't think he actually discovered Australia. I think he sailed round the bottom, round past Melbourne and round Tasmania. That's what was called Van Diemen's Land. But as the years went anyway, and Australia was more mapped, Captain Cook came here over 200 years ago and settled, and some white men come. Anyway, that led to England, because Captain Cook was from England. They thought, what a great place to send their criminals, because England back those days, if you were starving and you stole a loaf of bread, you were seen as a really terrible criminal. So, and they was putting them out in boats similar to the sailing ships out in the ocean, like I guess maybe the English Channel, and put hundreds on these boats, and it was horrendous, living in squalor, and they didn't know what to do with all the people. They just had so many criminals, what they thought was criminals. So they decided it would be a great idea to send these poor devils to Australia. So they started shipping them out, and the first fleet came and landed in the Sydney Harbour Cove, and settled. And that's the date we call Australia Day now, which is the 26th of January. Now, of course, that particular date causes a lot of anguish with our Aboriginal people and our so-called woke lefty people. They sort of call it Invasion Day, because of Captain Cook coming here and the white man settlement, you know, which I suppose is fair enough. I can understand perhaps, but we are now 200 years down the track, and it's so divisive. We have to find a way to come together so we don't see ourselves as traditional people or white people, because we have so many immigrants have come here over the last 80 or 100 years from all around the world. We're probably the most immigrant nation on the earth, really. We've got, you know, I don't think there's any person of Anglo-Saxon or even really of Asian descent that are here that haven't come from descendants of convicts or come here as migrants. You know, there would be families came here, say 100, 150 years ago, so now they've had heaps of generations, but everybody can trace back to coming from somewhere except the Aboriginals. So as we've gone on over that century, for a very, very long time, we were still ruled by the British Empire, because back then the empire was huge. And so, unlike America, we didn't have a civil war, or we didn't have to fight the redcoats to get rid of them. We just slowly moved towards being our own nation. And 100 odd years ago, we basically set up our own government and became a country of our own. Yes, we still acknowledge the royal family, and we still have the king or the queen as our head of state, but it's really just in namesake only. We do have a governor general that represents the thing, but they don't make any decision on our behalf. I mean, a lot of people think that the king or the queen actually runs our nation and we should really have our own. Well, we sort of do have our own. We elect our governor general. Now, over the years, we have had referendums to try to see if we could be a republic and move away from England, from what they call now the Commonwealth, and it's failed. And I think the reason it sort of failed is not because the average Australian is an idiot or doesn't see themselves wanting to be independent from England or the royal family. I think they just think, well, we have a democracy that works, and it's worked well for us for over 100 years, so what do we replace it with? Now, when we've had the referendums, there's never been any policies put forward or any models put forward that actually explains what we will be. It's always about, we'll have the referendum, we'll become republic, and then we'll decide. And so that leaves us up to the extreme right or the extreme left of our politicians thinking they can do it. Well, I don't think we're ever going to become a republic until both our major parties actually acknowledge and understand that they need to come up with a way for Australians to actually elect their leaders like we do under the Westminster system with our Prime Minister. Otherwise, it's never going to work. Why would Australians want to go away from a system that works and now all our politicians are elected? Yes, our politicians do elect the Governor General, but why would we have a head of state, like a president or something, that has a power or authority that's not chosen by the people? Now, I don't think Australia would be suited for an American system, so there's been talk that we would maintain the Westminster system, Parliament and politics, with our own head of state somehow. Well, you go, I don't know how that works. I guess we could just replace the Governor General with a figurehead. But what I don't understand, and I don't think a lot of Australians understand, why would we have one? If we're not going to be still come under the royal family and the king or queen structure, why do we need a head of state? Our Prime Minister is our head of state. And those that are advocating and trying, and it's happening again, trying to force their view that we should have a republic, well, I think if they said we won't ever have a person that's elected by the government or some fictitious person that's going to be elected to be seen as our head of state, which is no different to the royal family, which is just a position of privilege but no decision-making process, what's the point? So I think that Republican thing will always fail in Australia until the people on the Republican committee realise that's what's going to happen. Now, like I said, so we are probably, there's a few nations in the world, we also have compulsory voting. But the compulsory voting is also a little bit of a hypocrisy, because it's only compulsory if you're on the electoral roll. So let's take, for example, when you turn 18, you have the right to join the electoral roll, which makes them compulsory to vote. Now, if you never join the electoral roll, you're not compulsory to vote. Nobody, and you don't get fined, nothing happens. So if you don't want to vote, just don't get on the electoral roll. And if you don't vote anyway, I think you get a $20 or $30 fine. So it's a bit comical, right? But the philosophy of compulsory voting is not a bad idea, because it tends to, you're trying to get the view of everybody, not the view of a few. So when I watch the American system, let's just say 50% of the nation vote, and 30% of that 50% vote Republican or Democrat, which take power. Well, the 50% that never voted, you go, well, they can then come out and complain that, oh, well, I didn't vote for this president. Well, then serve you right, you should have voted, you silly idiot. And so that's how I feel about the Australian politics. But also, we have a really huge population of what they call permanent residents. Now, this is never talked about. It's only ever talked about compulsory voting and the masses. And I would be interested to find out exactly how many permanent residents we have, because permanent residents can't vote anyway. Now, unless you're an Australian citizen and you take up Australian citizenship, you don't get the right to vote. So we're a bit like everybody, really. We have all these silly little traditional laws, and we sort of make out we've got all this really super modern and we're ahead of the curve political system. But when you think about it, it's not much different anywhere else. Just the only good thing is, if the government's a joke, you do get a chance every 3 years to throw them out on their fat backsides. But that, in respect, what that's caused over the last few years is we now have professional politicians. I remember talking to my grandfather when he was a young man. The politicians, as they would pretend now, come from society, which would have been farmers, tractor drivers, train drivers, whatever. I mean, we had a Prime Minister who was a train driver. And they would go to Canberra and sit for so many days a year and vote and make policy and make laws. They would all then go back to their electorate where they came from and go back to their normal job, back to driving their train or farming their land or being solicitors. Well, somehow over the years, I guess that model wouldn't have worked in a modern day society. That has gone. And what appears to happen on the left side of politics is the politicians either start in a union as a union official and then work their way up to a position of power in the union, or they work for the union, or they work as secretaries, or they join and work in the Labor Party. So they all come up from the socialist left. Now, of course, the Labor Party is split between right wing and left wing, and currently right now we have a really major left wing Labor Party in power. So, which is like right now we've got the Anthony Albanese. He's from the same faction as Gough Whitlam. They're extreme left. Their view of the world is through a prism of we know what's best for you. We will sort of tell you what to do rather than be your leader. Whereas on the right side of the Labor Party, which was the era of the Bob Hawkes and Paul Keatings, they were still of the view that they represented us and they needed to put forward our views and respect our views and legislate on that way rather than tell us what to do. Now, even the right wing of Labor Party still tend to think they can tell us what to do, but the right wing's quite acceptable. But the left wing, like we've got now, they're extreme. And they make a lot of divisive decisions because they see us through their view, their prism. And if you don't agree with their view, then you're basically seen as being an idiot or stupid or naive, which is a shame. And so then on the Liberal side, the Liberals are seen as, under their constitution, what I can gather, they believe in small government, small public servants, rule the nation in representation of what we want, not tell us what they want and what they want us to do, and try to make it so we all have freedom to choose for ourselves. Whereas this left-leaning government we have now, they tell us, a close example, we've got a situation going on where we're all going to move towards renewable energy, which is, okay, that's a good thing. Good thing if we can protect our environment. But the guy we've got now, which is our Minister for Environment, Chris Bowen, he just lectures us. In his view, we're going to have renewables whether we like it or leave it. He doesn't care whether 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 or 70% of Australians disagree with him. He's from the extreme left. As far as he's concerned, he believes it and you're going to tolerate it. We see that now where, the classic laughable thing about the whole renewable thing is we have already, like every country, we already have our coal-fired power stations in place, and all the wiring and all the cables and all the lines, transmission lines, come out from those coal-fired power stations to the rest of the country. Now that we've decided, and I'm sure we all do agree, that coal-fired power station and fossil fuels needs to go, without a doubt. I don't think there is a person that doesn't have a little bit of environmental blood in them. But the reality is you have to replace that when technology puts you in a position where you can change it. Now, right now, the only possible replacement for fossil fuels that gives you baseload power, stable, reliable power all the time is nuclear. Now the whole of Europe and those countries are now, when they go to COP, that's, don't even know what this COP or COP is, that's where all the bureaucrat idiots from around the world get together and they talk about the climate change issues, and then they will go back to their countries and tell us what we're going to do. Well, even there, they've decided that it would be smart to ramp up and move nuclear. They have these small nuclear reactors now which can be just dumped into a community, not like the old days where you have these massive nuclear ones that just run like coal power fire stations. Well, the comical is, with this dictator Chris Bowen, and he is a dictator because as far as he's concerned we're getting it, the solar and the wind power can't go where our traditional coal-fired power stations are. So we have to build a complete brand new transmission system. Now, he tells us the power is going to be cheaper. He is quite correct in the fact that the actually manufacture of the power from the solar and the windmill will definitely be cheaper. However, he's very clever. He refuses to tell the public that it's probably going to cost, I don't know, 10, 15, who knows how many trillion to roll out a whole brand new transmission system, because the current transmission system can't hook up to it. So they're out there running around now, spending already billions and billions running new transmission lines, and they are forcing those lines to go into our agriculture and our rural areas. You know, I mean, because they've got to run them somewhere, so they're obviously running massive windmill power and solar power out in our agricultural areas, and it has to be taken up on good grazing and agricultural land. So what they're doing with the power lines, they're just reclaiming the land. Yes, they are paying the farmers for it, but it is token gesture when you consider, let's say you've got a 50 acre, 100 acre, 1,000 acre property, and they run the transmission lines through your property and the height of them, so the modern day farming implements can't go under them. The booms won't go under, and because we have such massive farming land estates, a lot of cropping, sowing and fertilising now is done by aircraft. And if you have these power lines running through these areas, which is what they're doing it, because they're trying to place the windmills and the solar in those areas, so the common sense says that's where the lines are going to go. Well, the crop dusters, they just won't fly there. So you don't only have this narrow patch where the lines go, you have going to have hundreds or thousands and thousands of acres which won't be able to be farmed. But our minister, he doesn't care about that. As far as he's concerned, we're having solar, like it or leave it. And they're also, to complement and make that happen, they're also making new legislation laws on motor vehicles. It's because they're trying to force the issue to make people move away from fossil fuel cars to electric cars. But isn't it comical? In parts of Australia now, you go out in the rural areas and they'll have electric powering station. Because there's no electrical lines there, they have a diesel generator out the back powering up the points to supply power. Now I know it's not everywhere, it's one-offs, but that just shows you the arrogance and the ignorance of the left that are forcing us into something that they believe is right, so we must follow suit. Now that's the real difference in this country between the Liberals and the left Labor. Liberals realise, you know, we have to move forward and protect our environment and do things that sometimes as people we don't like, but they try their very best to represent us. Whereas the left-leaning Labor, they don't want to represent you, they want to tell you. Now I think if in this country, if the major party, especially the Labor Party, don't come to realisation in the next 10 to 20 years that we so-called elect our politicians to represent our view, not for us to cop their view, well then it's probably not going to end well for them. Because because the right wing of Australia, which is probably 60 or 70% of us, have been tolerating the left view and opinions forced on us for quite some time now, and now it's getting to the sharp end of the sword, so to speak, where we're now getting things happen that the rest of us don't like. I mean, a common classic was we had a referendum here a few months ago for what the Labor Party put forward was going to be called the Voice to Parliament. And what that was going to be a voice specifically for our Indigenous Aboriginal people, that would only have Aboriginal Indigenous people on that voice, and their job would be to advise the government on how to lift the living standards of the Aboriginal people. Because we have this ideology in Australia where we have to keep saying we've got to close the gap. Nobody really knows what closing the gap is. If you ask the lefties, though, they'll say that's bringing the Aboriginals up to be what we are. Now that's a really lovely thought, and it's idyllic, but it's not realistic. So it's idealistic, but it's not realistic. And the reason it's not realistic is because we now have a lot of educated Aboriginal people that are acknowledging for the Aboriginal people's plight to be improved, we have to integrate them into the new modern Australia. But the extreme leaning left and the Aboriginal activists, they just want to keep focusing on what happened 200 years ago. You know, now, you would be a very arrogant and very ignorant person not to acknowledge that and truly be sorry about it. I mean, you know, there's without a doubt some of the Aboriginal people got treated really poorly back then. But however, if you want to see what Australia was like 200 years ago, you just need to go to Tasmania and go to the prison system in, say, Richmond, or down Hobart Way, or Port Arthur. Now, the treatment of the convicts that came here was absolutely atrocious. Some of those people lived worse lives than the Aboriginal people. Now, the Aboriginal people won't acknowledge that. They don't. That's sort of scrubbed from the agenda, and it's never to be talked about. And so what we've got now, we've got this divisive thing going on where we want to have, which is a bit like eradicating history. You know, like the lunatics that want to take away movies that depict something, or take away things like cartoon characters that don't wear pants or something, and things where movies made 40 years ago perhaps did racist things or behave. They want them eradicated and removed and never to be shown again. Well, if we do that and we hide and bury history, how the hell do we have a yardstick to measure against? If we want to go forward and have a really civil, decent community, it's absolutely crucial that we bring to the forefront every bit of history. The good, the bad, the ugly, the improvements, the whole lot. Then you can look at it and you can pick out the best parts, and you can also acknowledge the bad parts. But let's face it, you know, no community, no nation on earth can say that they've lived an incredible, I suppose, violent-free or utopia, because that's just ludicrous. Even in our own Aboriginal community, they would like you to believe before the white man came that they were all having a love-in. They all loved each other and it was beautiful and they lived off the land. Well, that's not true. Different tribes used to hunt each other and kill each other. But that's not allowed to be spoken about. So here is this dilemma for our politicians, our so-called elite academics. Now, isn't it amazing? We call people get educated and go to university academics. For the average Australian, the term academic really just, the right language pisses you off, because, and that's really usually from the left, as far as they're concerned, if the intelligence, and I saw a thing on Facebook today, I had a bit of a beep at him. They're basically saying, well, for the intelligent people have to shut up so the idiots can have a say. Well, how despicable. And that's the trouble with the extremely educated left guys. As far as they're concerned, if you don't have their view and you don't have their education, their political view, you're an idiot, and you don't deserve the right to have a say. But there's millions and millions and millions of highly intelligent, educated people that are Labor supporters and socialist supporters. I mean, I have socialism in me too. I don't see anybody suffer or go without. But we're not extreme lunatics like that. We don't want to trash and tear down every institution, you know. But they do. They want to trash and burn every part of our any system of management that works. They want to tear it down, destroy it. You know, I mean, a classic was last weekend in Melbourne. Once a year they have a march. I think they call it the Pride March there, and so, which is a wonderful thing. Gay people and trans people and all those types of people. I think there was 400 groups represented. March. And the whole idea was for inclusion, to make us all inclusive, respect each other, and be one. Okay? Beautiful thought. However, the people in that group, they are so extreme on the left. They want us to be inclusive with their views and their lifestyles. But what did they do on the day? The Victorian police were marching in the parade like everybody else, because obviously the police represent, just like the rest of our community, they have gays and possibly transsexual, I'm not sure. So they were marching in the parade. And what transpired? Obviously quite premeditated. There was a whole bunch of thugs, a group, were waiting, and when the police got close to them, they started to attack them and riot. They all had, some of them had pigs' heads on their head. Some were covered in pig's blood, I think they said. They also threw paint on the police. So you go, so why aren't they wanting to be inclusive with us? Now these are things in this country we never talk about. And the left and the Labor Party want to push that down. Now I know it sounds like I'm bashing the Labor Party, and that's a shame, because I have voted Labor in my life. When Bob Hawke and Paul Keating was in, I voted for them most of the time they were there, because they were a right side of the Labor Party, and they were realistic. And they, you know, they had socialist views, but they wanted us to all have a go too. They want us all to be equal in opportunity, but not equal in rewards. Because when you believe you think everybody can equal in rewards, you push everything down, you don't bring them up. So if everyone thinks that everybody can be wealthy and everybody can have all the things they want, and that's never going to work, because that's not reality. So that won't be equal. But if you make a society where everybody has the opportunity to lift themselves out of their circumstances, then that is a perfect situation. But what we've got now with this left Labor Party, and I reckon they're only going to be one-termers. Now there's going to be plenty of people listening to this video I've made, and they're going to come out swinging with bats and knock me down for me saying these things. But the Australian people, in the majority, just not going to tolerate it, because we are tired of being spoken to and dictated to, rather than being led and representing us. Now I'll give you an example of what I believe in, and I know a lot of Australians believe in this too, about our politics. Our politicians under our constitution are meant to go to Parliament and sit in Parliament and represent the views of their constituents in their electorate. In other words, let's say they look after an area that's 60, 100,000 people. If the majority of people in that area want all our trees painted green, they have to go into Parliament and fight for us having the trees painted green. Now I know that's a really silly example, but that's the way it is. But no, they don't do that. They'll tell us in the electoral cycle when it's coming around that's what they're going to do, but they don't. When they get there, they change from being our elected official to represent us to being our masters and tell us what to do. I'll give you a more example which is really going to inflame people up, right? So it's classic. When we had the election for gay marriage, something that I was in favour of. I'm a straight guy, but I was in favour of it, right? However, we have a very diverse country of immigrants of all nationalities and all faiths and all religions, right? Now, so let's give you an example. If you was an elected official in an electorate in an area of Australia, in the cities, wherever, that your constituents said that no, we disagree with gay marriage, theoretically you should have went to Parliament and voted no. If you worked in an electorate where the people said yes, we want it, then you go to Parliament, and when the plebiscite came up, you should vote yes. But that's not what happened. Our governments gave, which I believe in retrospect back is like they do with a lot of things, they skewed it to get the result they wanted. So what they did was they said, okay, we'll give all the politicians, especially on the Labor side, or no, the Liberal side, because Liberals, they said we'll give you all what they call a conscience vote. Now that basically meant the politicians did not have to represent us. They voted on what they believed on. Now in that instance, gay marriage, I am pleased as a society that was passed, because why shouldn't you be able to get married if you're gay, right? However, it's the concept that I disagree with, and a lot of Australians disagree with. So sometimes our political system, which is skewed in the wrong way, probably gets the right results. But we need to be thinking in a country like us, which is supposed to be a true democracy, what do we expect from our politicians? We need to start forcing them to understand their role, to represent us, to put our views forward in Parliament, and then also accept the majority rule. So we have a thing now with the referendum for their voice. Who cares what your personal view is? The referendum came down 60% no, 40% yes. So that meant 2/3 of Australians said no, 1/3 said yes. Give or take the figure, right? Now, in a true democracy, we then have to acknowledge that the majority won, and the minority have to accept the decision of the umpire, which is the majority rule. What is happening in Australia, and it's happening around the world, is the left refuse to accept the majority rule if it's not their view or their policy or their wish. So in other words, the 40% actually refuse to accept the vote and the decision of the 60. Our Prime Minister has now come out just the other night and he said, okay, that vote though was for a model. That's all. And so I don't accept the premise that the Australians don't want it. We're going to come up with a different system that will give us the same result. Now I don't understand why a Prime Minister has seen the majority of his nation vote in one particular way, but he's the classic of the Labor left. He refuses to accept that premise or that view of the people. Now democracy will flounder and could come unstuck if we continue to allow that type of attitude to keep on growing, and it is growing. We need to make sure that as a civil society we always still acknowledge and accept the majority rule. We also have to accept the fact that sometimes people do things which aren't in line with our cultural beliefs or our views. We must pull them into gear. Now right now in Australia we have, like all around the world, we have a massive problem going on with this Jewish issue in Israel and Palestine. So Australia's constitution and what we promote, we promote that everybody's equal in the eyes of law in Australia. Everybody has the same legal rights regardless of your religion, your colour of your skin, your beliefs in sexual choice, whatever it is, you have a right to have that view, and you have a right to live in peace and harmony. Well, when the war broke out between Hamas and Israel, and the reason it started, yes, people will say it was 40, 50 years of oppression. Maybe so. But unless you come from there, you don't really know. However, people need to remember, I think it was 2006, the Jews pulled out of Gaza, and yes, unfortunately the way the Gaza is structured, most things have to come in through Israel. But there was plenty of people in Palestine and Gaza were going across the border to medical, health, to work. And I'm not saying that every Jewish person in Israel was not racist and not reasonable, because anybody in their right mind knows not everybody will always be that way. Well, the Hamas, as we all know, crashed through the fence and murdered women, children, and did what they did. So the Israelis retaliated. Ugly on both sides. You know, if you're a peaceful person, you realise none of that is productive and none of it's going to end well for anybody. Well, Australia, we had the Palestinian mob. They decided they weren't just going to have a peaceful protest in our streets. They were going to go and really, really be ugly and really have hatred towards the Jews. And they did. And they stormed down in thousands to our Opera House and they were screaming obscenities. Now, It's been said they was calling out gas the Jews, but there's another component of our society, so they weren't saying gas the Jews, they were saying where are the Jews? But even so, no matter what was, Australia doesn't really want that rubbish on our streets. Are the Palestinians allowed to have their view about the Jews? Of course they are. Are the Jewish allowed to have their personal view about the Palestinians? Of course they are. But we don't need to be taking the violence to our streets. You know, everybody that's come here as an immigrant came here for a reason. They didn't come here because, well, they might, if they're terrorists, they might have come here to try and destroy us. But generally speaking, if you asked if you could speak to the original immigrants that have landed here, and we're not talking descendants of people that come here years ago, they came here to either find a better life, better opportunities, or to escape something. So the Middle Eastern people have come here, they've either come here to, like I said, have a better life or to escape some sort of oppression. Whether you're a Muslim, a Jew or a Christian or whatever you are, you've come here for that reason. Now, do you stand by and watch things happen back in your homeland? Well, that's pretty horrible to suck up, I realise. But why would you then march in the street and try to reenact what's happening back in your homeland in this country that's given you everything? Given you freedom, given you choice, given you an opportunity to have wealth, given you an opportunity to live in a land where you can get whatever you want if you're willing to work hard and achieve. Now, is there every opportunity for everybody? Possibly not. I'm not a moron. I acknowledge and understand that not everybody's going to get a peaceful ride. That's where, as a democracy in our socialism, should say, okay, we'll help those people. But we had absolutely nothing happen to those people. Nothing was said or done. Now, I don't know what you do with thousands of people screaming those sort of hatreds. But anyway, a few weeks or a month goes by. We have this other ugly side on our extreme right. So, you know, we have this extreme right and the extreme left. The extreme left are the burn the country down, tear down every institution, like the Palestinians, gas the Jews, burn the Jews, take away every wealth, make us all equal, a bit like communism. On the far right, you have this Nazi, dictator, fascist belief, and we had that group show itself up here some weeks ago on our trains. They were going in the city, they wear black, they goose step up the street, they scream hatred to the left, hatred to anybody that doesn't believe in extreme right philosophy like Hitler and rubbish like that. Well, we had then the nation screaming that we must pull their masks off, expose them, and find anywhere in our law where we could arrest them and charge them. I believe that would have been a great thing to do. But how can you have the extreme left alone to do their thing when you won't attack the extreme right? Now, when you don't attack those things and you don't go middle stream, you run the risk that the extreme right will grow and grow, and the extreme left will grow and grow. The middle, mainstream in the middle, will eventually come unstuck because the right and the left will start to war in the streets. Now, you see that all around, especially in the Middle East. You see the extreme left killing and murdering the extreme right, and vice versa. So, for the love of God, I don't understand what that's all about. But I sort of suspect, unless we as people demand more from our politicians, more from our bureaucrats, to play with a straight bat, nothing's going to change. I mean, you see it happening now in America. Whether you want Donald Trump to be the president or you want Joe Biden, it's irrelevant, because both men don't seem to be the greatest of people. You know, like, I'm not talking about their skills or their beliefs. They seem pretty average sort of blokes in their personal life, right? Well, you've got one side on their right side, which is Trumpy's division, wanted to burn down the White House and burn down Washington and crash it to the ground. And then on the other side, you've got Biden, who's trying to manipulate and use the whole political force and the justice system to tear down Donald Trump. So placing lefty lawyers, lefty judges to try and they've got all these charges against Donald Trump. Some might be true, some might be made up. but not to actually truly just try Donald Trump for crimes, but to destroy him so he cannot run for presidency. So you'll have one side wants to possibly destroy democracy by having riots and burn the joint down, and extreme right. On the other side, you've got the extreme left letting illegal immigrants come in thousands, run a riot, bash police, do what they want, extreme views on all sorts of issues, attack the right. And so you have this dilemma where America now is divided, not just with sections, the whole community split down the guts. You have 40 or 30 or 40% one side, 30 or 40% the other side, and then 20 in the middle that don't care. Well, that nation rules the world. They call him, the president is the leader of the free world. Well, if America crumbles and crashes internally because of the right and left hatred and their views, what hope's the rest of us got? So you know, I'm not advocating that we're going to all live in utopia and we're going to live in the Garden of Eden, but people have to consider and think about what they want from their leaders and what they want from their communities. Do we want crime and racism and poverty and dictators? All those things are ugly components of human greed and whatever. Now, we can't tackle them all at one time, but we need to be tackling them, chipping away at them one by one. Now, some countries in the world probably have horrendous crimes every day that we don't know about, right? But take this last week. We had this horrendous crime in Brisbane. I think it might be out of Ipswich. Okay, so we've got 4 immigrants. Now, I don't know whether they came here as tiny children or whether they was born second generation. Now, sadly, they look like Sudanese. I don't know, that might be picking on the Sudanese, but they were really, really dark-skinned people. Now, the sad tragedy is, to say those words and say what we've got makes it look like I'm racist against those people. Well, that group of young men, 15, 16, especially one, they have been going around in areas up there and doing horrendous crimes. And they don't care. They basically say straight, we don't care about the police, we don't care about people. Now, there was an elderly lady, 75, was just going to the shops with her 6-year-old granddaughter. She gets up inside the shopping centre, she thinks, I don't think I locked my car. Oh, bugger it, I better go back down. When she gets to her car, here's this 4 mob rule. They decided, bugger it, so one of them stabbed her to death. Stabbed the lady to death in front of her 6-year-old child. And then drives off in the car while she's laying there dead, or dying, while people are trying to revive her. Now, the point I'm making here is, no, I'm not making the point they're Sudanese or they're Chinese or they're European or they're French. No, what I'm saying is, we on the left have been breaking down our community standards and our moral fibre, because the left do that. As far as they can see, the more extreme they are, the better it is. Now, we started about 30 years ago with our young children saying, you have the right as everybody else has a right. So in other words, we're telling 3-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 12-year-olds that they have every right and privilege that an adult has. Now, the majority of Australians realise a child has the right to be respected and treated with kindness and love, but they have to be disciplined and they have to be taught and mentored what is right and what is wrong. But we have situations now where our children go to school and they don't have to do anything. If they don't want to listen to the teacher, well, there's not much they can do except suspend them. They're violent, they bash our teachers. But that's because our teachers they've also moved to the woke left. They rally them up with climate change and all the things about different sexes and different behaviour. And instead of teaching them respect for those things, they are raising them up that you do not have to comply with something you don't agree with. Now, there's very, very big difference from complying with disagreeing. Now, that'd be like me saying, okay, Anthony Albanese is now being elected as the Prime Minister. And so I really will not comply with anything that government does because I disagree with it. That is a travesty and it is wrong. I must respect him as Prime Minister, give him the respect he deserves, and comply to their laws, right? But I don't have to agree with them. And if I don't like them, then I vote against them next election. And if the majority of Australians don't like them, we vote them out and kick them out. That's how we're supposed to rebel. Not tearing up the streets and carrying on like pork chops. But we've gone so far down this barrel, down this rabbit hole, we have war on so many fronts we don't know where to turn. Australia has a pandemic of drugs. And I can speak about that because my middle son, Christopher, is a drug addict. He started off, poor kid, as a schizophrenia. And did I behave as a good father? No, I did not. Did his mother behave as a good mother? No, she did not. Is it because we're bad people? No. We didn't understand. We didn't know. Me and his mother worked 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, like most people did. And Chris was just, because he was a schizophrenic, he was bad behaviour at school. It was just a very difficult time to handle, right? Well, when he got to 14, he was introduced to illegal drugs. So just imagine, so he's introduced to illegal drugs and his whole life and the whole family disintegrate. The more drugs he did, the more crime he did. The older he got, the more difficult it was to control him and teach him respect and mentor him. It got to the point where you couldn't. I think at 14, 15, we sent him to a Catholic special school, which is a wonderful school in this country by the Maris brothers. It was called Burn. And they took children that could not fit into the normal range of education, and they took it upon themselves to get them an education. But that beautiful school wasn't about ramming down maths and science and English to make them academic. Their belief was, yes, those things were very, very important, but not everything. And so it was important to teach those young men, I think there was men, there might have been women, I'm not sure girls, the young men, how to also cope in life, how to be respectful, how to behave, and how to fit into our society as respectful, decent citizens. Well, you know, that's 20 years ago now. Our son now is actually in a mental institution in St Vincent's Hospital, and he's signed himself over to go there because he's had many attempts at rehabilitation, but we've got such catastrophic failings in this country. If you're a drug addict, you've got to go to detox first before you go to rehab. There is insufficient detox facilities and absolutely about 80% insufficient rehabilitation places. So an addict goes for a week, detoxes, gets clean, then has nowhere to go. So that person's already destroyed, he or she's destroyed, family destroyed because they're so bad. So they go back to the squalor and the people that they've just left. Within 3 weeks, they're back on drugs. So even say on the 4th or 5th week, a rehab turns up, that person can't go to rehab because they've got to go back to detox. And the detox will probably be another 6 or 8 weeks to get them in. So actually, if anything, us as people and our politicians, they are committing those people to be like that the rest of their lives. Our politicians won't accept that, they won't acknowledge that, they won't do it, but actually what they're doing, they are forcing poverty and extreme awfulness, if that's a word, on these people. Because our bureaucratic political system is so pathetic that it doesn't address the problem, it just addresses the political view. We've also got ourselves into a problem where we have had, because Australia over the years we are a very, very wealthy nation. And been a Conservative government for many, many years, and we've had a few Labor governments, right? Now, everybody will acknowledge when the Labors come to power, especially the Bob Hawke and Paul Keating era, we reformed a lot of things and got a lot of social things through the Parliament, which was good for Australia, right? But they ran up massive debt. So the Liberals would then come in, the more Conservatives, and they would clean up the debt and give us a surplus again. You go right back to Gough Whitlam, he made a lot of good reforms, but just about run the country broke. The situation we've got now is we've had a GFC, we've had a pandemic, so the country is now really in massive, massive debt. And nobody can, in the foreseeable future, can see how we're going to get that debt down. They're talking 40 years of not surpluses when you have deficiency, when they're going to be spending more than they're making. So you add that together, so the government's out of money because they can't take any more offers because we're already in trouble. So what's been their answer? To have massive, massive increase in immigration. And you know, and as a person, I'm not saying anything about immigration because we made up of that, right? But this massive immigration is a massive lie, because what it does, it fictitiously increases the CPI and your GDP growth. And I'll give you an example of what that means. You've got 10 people in a community and they're spending $1 each. So the GDP is $10. You bring in one person, so technically you've now got 11, so you've increased your population by 10%. So common sense, they all spend $1, you've now spent $11. The government will report that we've had a 10% GDP growth. Now we all know that's a crock of crap. Now that's been going on in Australia for 30 years and it's finally coming to a head. And so what that's caused is, that's created more demand than supply in everything. More demand for housing, more demand for health, roads, schools, you name it, with insufficient supply. Because we've been squandering and wasting money and still got debt, the GDP growth is a lie, so we're just growing the pie and everybody in the pie is getting less. Now we have a situation now, this last 12 months, the current government has brought in 500,000 people. Now that would be families and individuals. We only built 200,000 houses. And they all rant and rave and we're going to build more houses. Well, we're going to have a cessation on immigration for a while. But we can't do that because that's how they want to get us out of our financial debt. I call it inflation in it away. So if we owe $1 trillion now, and we've got 27 million, we just passed 27 million, they know if they can push the population to 35 million or 40 million, $1 trillion is not much. So if we talk of $1 trillion over 27 million, there would be a percentage of people get to certain people. I don't have the academic skill right now to be able to tell you what that percentage would be. Let's say it's 100,000 per person, okay, federal debt. If we raise our population to 40 million, that debt probably drops back to 30,000 or 20,000. So the debt becomes less of a burden. Now, if that's all they did, that wouldn't be a bad thing. But they're not curbing the debt. They're not curbing the spending. So instead of being 35,000 still with $1 trillion debt, we'll have 35 million with 1.5 trillion debt. And we are buying it. We are buying this rubbish from these morons. And on the right side of politics, we never seem to have the ability to explain that to people. We never have the ability to put those financial statistics on the table. We just get screamed down as being right-wing, liberal people, haters of the left, haters of the poor, get rich, yada, yada, yada. Well, I can tell you, I've voted Labor a lot, and I've now been voting Liberal the last 10 years. That is not true. There's a lot of people that are doing well for themselves still believe in a socialist society where we help those that need it. But there's a huge difference between a hand out and a hand up, or a leg up, you know, honestly. You know, do we give you a leg up or do we give you a hand out? The left wants to give handouts. Now that does not do any good for our nation or any good for that individual person. If you don't want to work, you want to lay in the park and do nothing, that's fine by me, right? But the more we give you money, that's the more we encourage you to do that. Now, am I saying that everybody that lives in a park is there by choice? Probably not many. I don't know what the percentage is, but there is a growing problem in this country of this situation where we basically are saying to people, do nothing and take. So don't be a giver, be a taker. Now, I don't know what mentality or what moron thinks that, because the money that comes from the government comes from the society. Our government does not print money and give it out, even though some people think we do. They do not print money. They take money off all of us and then redistribute it. Now, that is the wonderful belief of what democracy came about. And governments come about because you go right back in the Westminster, in the, say, the Commonwealth of the British Empire, you had lords and gentry and royalty, and 90% of the population was starving outside the gates of the castles. So Oliver Cromwell came along and said, bugger this, we're not putting up with it anymore, and they tore down the castles. They went in, they grabbed the king, and they cut his head off. Then they said, we're going to have a parliament, and the parliament's going to be elected by the people. We will allow the lords and the wealthy to sit in the House of Review, which is called their, that's their upper house. We call it the Senate in Australia, which is their parliament's called the House of Lords. And we'll have the parliament, the house that the people vote, and the House of the People in England's called the House of Commons, because people were seen as commoners and lords. And in Australia we call it the lower house and the upper house, Senate and normal house. They started that, and then they let the next royal person, so they still kept the king and queen. Oliver Cromwell didn't say we won't have a royal family, won't have a royalty. What they did was they said, okay, we will take away your authority to actually rule. So the royal family, the king or queen, no longer ruled. They just become a stamp for what the politicians would pass, and they basically became seen as the government, the king or the queen's government. Okay, well that started, and then democracy, how that started was they would take off all of us to help those who could not help themselves. In theory, it's the most wonderful, idyllic belief you could possibly have. You're a struggler, you can't get educated, you're poor, you're living in poverty. Someone that's earning serious money gives up some part of their dough so that can be redistributed to you. Now, I don't know when in Australia, when that went from being a privilege to get that welfare from other people to becoming a right. Now, I'll give you a scenario of what's happened in this country, and I'm sure it's every other country. It's pretty extreme, and I know some people are going to say, you're a moron, Peter Walker. This is not true, and you're just a liberal right-wing moron, right? So let me give you the example. Long time ago, the wealthy were earning $10, and the poor were scratching around the ground to get a feed, no money. So someone says to the wealthy, look guys, I reckon it'd be a good idea if you guys gave up $1 and we gave that $1 to the poor. And the wealthy go, you know, that's a pretty fair idea. I think that's a really great idea. Let's do that. I'll give up $1. So they go up $1. Still doesn't seem quite fair, does it? Scratching around the ground, still got $1, they got $9. So they go back and say, listen to the wealthy, any chance you give up another $1? Good idea, we'll give up another $1. And so on it goes over a period of time. Eventually it gets to the wealthy giving up $4. Giving up $4, they're keeping $6, and the poor are getting $4. Now, because they're starting to get a reasonable amount of money, some of the poor go, bugger this, I don't need to do nothing. I'll just keep getting the money. I'm not going to commit or give anything to society, I'm just going to keep taking the money. Not all, but a percentage. Then you have the wealthy going, bugger this, I'm working huge commitments, huge hours, and they're getting nearly as much as me for doing nothing. So you start to take away hope and dreams and the will to do better for yourself. Now that's the left for you. The left would like if you all got $5 each. But when you all get $5 each, who will get out of bed in the morning and go the extra mile? Who will go and be a police officer? Who will go and be in the military? Who will go and be a doctor and a lawyer and a nurse? Who will go and clean toilets? You go, why would you? So your economy and your community disintegrates because there's no room for improvement, because no matter whether you do improve yourself, you're still going to get $5. Now on the Conservative side, which sadly goes too far. The Conservative side say, look, we won't do that. We will minimise tax to the maximum, so everybody pays the least amount of taxes we can take off you. And we will try to make society a platform for you to improve yourself. Now, common sense says not everybody will be able to improve themselves. So those people, we have to take special action to help them. Whether you be an Indigenous person or impoverished from a family that your parents are drunks or are drug addicts, I don't see any difference between any of those people. Every child, whether it be your religion, your colour of your skin, whatever, they need to be helped to get education, live safe, and start to benefit from the wealth this nation has now in 2024. We're never going back. We can never take back what's been done to generations before us. We can never we can say we're sorry, but we can't give up the modern day wealth for what was happening 200 years ago, because the wealth today is 1,000,000 times more than when we came, except for the land. You know, land's been developed, it's been promoted, so the wealth now is more than we took off those people 200 years ago. So we need to be able to bring them up to integrate, which is a really horrible word, nobody likes that word, but integrate into the modern day society. Now, Jacinta Price, she is a wonderful advocate for Australia. We need 500 of her in our parliament. She's an Aboriginal lady. Her mother is very, very, a lot of Aboriginal history in her, and her father is a white man. So her father has married a long-standing Aboriginal, and their children are, as we would say, mixed race. She was heard, along with some other wonderful people, were big advocates not to have the voice. Now, what she's saying, she came out even just yesterday, and she's saying, look, if we want to have any hope of this so-called closing the gap, lifting people out of poverty, lifting Aboriginal out of these communities, we have to not just keep giving money and giving them land and giving them a free ride. We have to say, look, we want to give you everything we've got, but you actually have to do something in reply, which is, you've got to take the opportunities we give you to go to school. You've got to allow us, just like we do with our white kids, if your parents are beating you, they're drug addicts, they're bashing up your mother, we should be allowed to take your child into foster care. But we're too petrified to that because we had this history where they said it was a stolen generation, where we walked in and took them out then. Now, whether we took kids that were in danger, I don't know. I wasn't there. But we have plenty of people. Now, we just had a lady die the other day. And you know what? I should be ashamed of myself. I can't think of her name. She was 91, an Aboriginal lady. She went and lived as a small child with some nuns. And she said right to the day she died, she was privileged. She never saw herself as a stolen child. She saw herself as lucky, because we took her from a horrible family or people that was starving her and beating her and gave her a life. So we have to stop this fear of another stolen generation. We're taking people away, we're trashing them. We've got to look at every individual child in this country and go, okay, that child in its current state, current place, is not going to have any hope in life. We then have to find a way to give that child an opportunity. Now, is it right to take that child and put them into a white family? Maybe not. But you can't tell me now in 2024 we don't have serious amounts of Aboriginal people that have become educated, like Jacinta Price, that can foster these children out. So they still retain their culture, but we give them the opportunity to go to school, get an education, be successful. Live, get advantage from our wealth, our money, our opportunities. And so we all become one Australians, not divided, not the traditional owners, not migrants, not whatever. We need to be one nation. Now, is that easy? Of course it's not. But it's not difficult to work out in our brains if we don't see ourselves as all the same. We all got the same blood in our veins. We've all had horrible things happen to us. You know, are we going to sue the Japanese for the next 1,000 years for killing all our soldiers and what they did to them at the in Singapore, in Changi prisons, and on the death marches and in the River Kwai? Of course we're not. We've realised after 60 or 80 years we've had to forgive the Japanese for their forefathers. The Japanese today didn't murder and pillage and kill out. Their fathers did that. It's our fathers and forefathers that did it to the Aboriginal people, not today's people. We've got to stop making out that every person that's not Aboriginal is racist. We're full of hatred. We're criminals. We have other people in our society, which is a classic. Yeah, I can't say names because I'll be in a lawsuit. But we have people in this country, in their DNA and their breakdown through their families, are 10% Aboriginal, 90% other cultures, who stand before us and say, we've been robbed, you've stolen my land, you've stolen this, you've stolen that. They're educated. You know, honestly, they never say, oh, I'm also white, I also went to school, I had everything was given to me. Especially when their own parents come out and say, that kid never went without nothing. Went to great schools, got educated, got great jobs, have lived from the luxury of this land to now stand before and say, oh, you robbed me, you took everything off me. You've had nothing taken off you. On that side of your 10%, yes, perhaps they did, but you've had nothing stolen from you. You've had nothing but opportunities, especially when 90% of your family came from another country. You go, honestly, but we can't have that discussion. We can't have those, that history being shown up. It's just, and so all these people that say, I'm an Aboriginal, and refuse to acknowledge any other part of their family tree, then we are stupid. Because in other words, we're going to have to give up land to millions and millions and millions of people that are mixed race. Now in 2024, we have to acknowledge that mixed race is here now, and it's never going back. There is people that live in our cities that are mixed race Aboriginal and white people who would have no clue of the history of their forefathers on the Aboriginal side. Still go to a supermarket and buy their milk. Don't know about their culture, but they will say we robbed them of that, so they've lost it. They don't want it. That's why we need to educate everybody, share their culture with us, but we all must be one of the same. But I don't see in my lifetime how that's going to happen, because our current government is doing divisive things. They're also now trying to do divisive things between the employer and the employee. We've had 20 years now of trying to break down the militant carry-on, where one part of our community gets better wages and conditions than the other part. So if you belong to a big, strong union, you get paid thousands more and heaps of conditions. If you work in another part of our society where, like a cleaner, like a garbage collector maybe, you get nothing. And you ask the unions what that's all about, and you know what they say to you? Oh yeah, but we're for our members. I've never seen a big powerful union like the CMFU, the Transport Workers Union, the Waterside Workers Union actually say, we will go on strike for those people out there who are cleaners, those people who are ward orderlies, those people that have to work out in the farms picking fruit. No, they don't. They couldn't care less about them. So it defies the logic of what the union's about. They go, no, we're only worried about our little union, our little power play. So I don't know how we're going to address that either. But what we got now is, they're about to pass this absolutely bloody joke of a law where your employer can't contact you after work. Another idealistic view. So when you go home, your employer can't contact you. I think that's probably reasonable if your salary and your work, I don't know, say you're on 200 grand and you're on salary. Well, I would think if you're on $200,000 a year and your salary, I think you probably have to suck it up that your boss is going to want to talk to you sometime after hours. However, if you're a $40,000 cleaner, your boss is never going to call you anyway. Because you're just a bundy on, bundy off, go home. He's got no reason to call you. So it's absolutely just a political stunt. Let's take, you're a hotel and you have all casual staff. Okay, you can't call you're not allowed to contact your staff. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, your roster's been made for tomorrow and you've got 10 casuals on. 3 people tell you at 4:15, I'm sorry boss, I can't work tomorrow at 8 o'clock. How are you going to communicate with 3 more casuals to come in? It's impossible. So you either break the law and ring them up and say, would you like to come to work? And I'm sure those people go, oh, thank you boss, I'm coming. Or do you go, nothing, can't contact them, and you have 3 short tomorrow. So you have the potential 7 will have to work twice as hard, which is in defiance what the union want anyway, and what the government, this Labor government is saying, so they must work harder. Possibly the employer will lose money. So how can it be beneficial in that respect where the employer loses money and the 7 staff have to work their asses off? And the people coming into that business, coming to the bar, don't get a nice experience. I don't see how that has benefited anybody, except the political morons that try to make a political statement. And we, as a communist, we have to start saying to our politicians, we are sick to death of you making political statements. Both Liberal and Labor, and the Greens, for Christ's sake. The Greens, they don't want to agree with anything. And the Teals. Yeah, mate, look at them with their renewables. The Teals, who generally speaking are all wealthy. There is not a cleaner who is a Teal. There's not a person that has to go and work as a labourer who is a Teal. So they are what you call the elite lefties. So they got lots of money, they're wealthy, they can do anything they want in Parliament to our society because they can afford it. They don't care if power goes up 500%. They don't care if your water goes up 500%. They don't care about those things because they can afford it. And classic, we had an actress, I won't say her name too because I don't want to be sued. Okay, I said the wrong one. She came out a couple of years ago and says, oh, well does it really matter if we have to pay $500 more for our power because that saves the environment? Well, so be it. It's all very well if you get $20 million a movie, but if you earn $40,000 a year, $500 for you is something you can't afford. When you're 20 million, it's chump change, absolute chump change, and that is the academic elite trying to force their view on the poor. So here's these people who pretend to be for the poor, for the people. They're liars. They are capitalists and themselves, but they hide and pretend to be a socialist. And they are the most despicable of all. Wealthy lefties who try to force their view on all of us, and who suffers? The poor people again. I run my own business, I'm not a millionaire, but I can certainly afford $500 more a quarter for my power. So I don't care if the Greens and the Teals do all this, and this Bowen do moronic things with the windmills. But there's a young lady lives near me, single mother. She won't be able to pay for power. She'll have to turn her air conditioner off, turn her heater off. So how has the lefties and Chris Bowen helped her? They only want to go when they retire from Parliament and go, look what I did. I did this massive reform. They couldn't care less the damage they do to the people on the way through because they're political animals and they're power-hungry morons. Now, we've had them in the Liberal Party too. There's plenty. It just I'm having this now because we sadly have, well, right now we have a Labor Party. So there's no point in me attacking the Liberals right now because they're just morons they're in opposition. And we've got to decide come next election where those morons are going to be better than the morons that are there. And I don't live in delusion that they're probably going to be much better. But I do understand the constitutional view of both parties. The Liberals probably their founding beliefs is let the market run itself, let people have opportunities, let them improve themselves. And hopefully, like they said with Howard's battlers, hopefully we also pick up the tab for the poor people that can't get on that run. So you want your nation to be wealthier than to help the poor. You don't want to drag it all down. So you don't want a parliament that says, oh, instead of promoting wealth and lifting people up and making everybody wealthier, and if you're wealthy yourself, you will quite gladly donate to charity. If you've got the arse out of your trousers, you're not going to donate nothing. And you know, if the parliament pushes you down so you all earn $5, I'm not going to help the bloke next door. Couldn't care less because I'm struggling to feed myself. I would much rather see our nation have 2/3 wealthy and those 2/3 help the poor than have 2/3 poor. But the trouble with the extreme left, they paint a picture that they're going to make everybody have a lovely utopia life by being equal. It does not work. It never will work. It's idealistic, but it's not realistic. It will never, ever, ever work. And so, you know, I don't know how we as people start to bring back economics into our primary schools. Start teaching our kids about the reality of money, the reality of making a living, the reality of investing money, banking money, wastage. You ask a kid today, let's say he's 15, you ask him what compounding interest is or compounding growth. He looks at you like you're a moron, because we have, in the schools, we've removed all that sense of education and responsibility to learn about those things, to be responsible for yourself, to go, don't worry about that. Let's worry about the climate change. Let's worry about the seals. Let's worry about, and so they are worried about that. You've got kids crying because climate change is going to blow up the world, and they can't even work out if they go to the supermarket if they've been ripped off, if they've got change or not. They don't know how to invest money. They don't know how to save for a house. They don't know how to not waste money. They'll go to the supermarket every week, and instead of taking a recyclable, a green bag, they'll buy a 25-cent recyclable every time they go. You know, I've said to my son, you go there and you buy 4 bags a week. Doesn't seem much. Or say, yeah, it comes to $1. What we do, $1. It's $50 a year. That's $50 a year you could have put towards your power bill. Now that's just one item which we haven't taught our young people. We haven't taught them that compounds. So you don't just buy stuff and throw it away. You don't overbuy food and throw $20 worth of food in the bin. If you don't teach and mentor your young people to know all those things, they actually squander thousands and thousands of dollars and don't even know it. And then we complain about them. I hear it all the time from family and friends. We complain all the time about young people. Yes, and I'm sure my father complained about me too, because I'm sure I was a pain in the ass as well. But we have made our young people what they are. We've been the mentors, the teachers, the parents, the politicians. So we are the ones which should be complaining about ourselves. We're the ones that should be getting beat up, because we're the ones that created the young people. They weren't born 25 pains in the asses. They got there after going through 25 years of schooling. Now, isn't that a joke? We want to beat them up for the things we taught them. So I don't know. So anyway, I've been ranting for a while now. This is going to be on my Facebook page. It's going to be on all my social media pages. And I like to sort of see it's a bit like I should know, I'm 60-year-old. It's not a blog, then when they go on the radio, they call these podcasts. That's another bullshit thing we've got. Now, everybody has a podcast. So we have a podcast, and we all get on there and we all talk crap, and that's supposed to be entertaining. Well, I've just done a podcast. This is my own personal podcast, and you know what? If you don't like it, because I'm a bit like Paul Murray, it's an opinion video, and you don't have to listen to it if you don't want. If you want to listen to it, great. If you don't bother. But my point is, Australia is probably one of the most beautiful nations in the world. I don't want to see us inviting people to come to Australia and not get the promise we give them. We promise people to come and have a better life. We promise people to come, they'll have opportunities. We promise them they'll have good health, housing, good health. And when they come, it's a lie. They can't get a house. They struggle with a job. They go to hospital and wait 10, 20 hours. If they don't have some sort of coverage, they can't get it anyway. they've got to wait. You know, we're divisive. We've got Palestinians ranting in one straight, kill the Jews. Then we've got another group from Aboriginals run us down. Then we've got white people screaming at something else. We are becoming a divisive nation, which goes against the whole grain of what Australia's been trying to say for 50 years, 100 years. I have a really, really, really lovely friend that I'm soon to call my partner, probably. Yes, I would. I'll call her my partner now because we are, right? She's a lovely, lovely lady. Her son lives here. She's become a personal resident, right? Gorgeous lady. I really love her dearly. You know, she said to me when I asked her why she would like to come to Australia, she said because there's no racism in Australia, Peter. In the eyes of the law, you're all equal. And so I said to her, well, what makes you sort of say that? Because we do have those things here. You know what she said to me? In my country, where I come from, if you're a national, which is in their country, Indonesia, a Bumi, you basically are categorised as first class. If you're not, then you're second class. In their parliament, in their constitution. So, two people, you've got a 5-generation Chinese person living in Indonesia. So they're Chinese Indonesian. That kid wants to go to university, and there's one. Let's just say there's 3 spots, and there's 2 what they call first class, and one say maybe 3 first class and 1 Chinese. Even though the Chinese has probably better academic skills than the other 3, those 3 will get the positions first. The only time this Chinese person in that country will get the job if there's a vacancy that the traditionals haven't filled. Now that is true racism, and she says to me, but in the eyes of the Australian law, that can't happen. There is no discrimination. If I want to go into Centrelink, I'll get treated just like everybody else. If I go to the hospital, I'll get treated like everyone else. I'll go in line just like everybody else. I won't go to the front because I'm an Aboriginal, because I'm white. And when you think about that, that is truly this nation. But we want sections, minority pockets, are telling us that we are really evil people. That is not the case. They are trying to make racism. They are trying to make division between us because that gives them their power. If we truly, truly were successful to have none of this division, let's just take all these agitators and all these people. If we took that away, they have nothing to carry on about. So they won't let it happen. Unless we as people make our government stop it, it's never going to go away, because the people that stand on the pillbox and scream, invasion day, you took our land, you're killing us, yada, yada, yada. If we fix that problem, those people will find another issue, because they are power-hungry, horrible people that want to be recognised for being troublemakers. They're divisive. They're not truly standing up, ranting to get benefits for the other person. Like I said, there's one lady that everyone knows. She's 90% from another nation, 10% Aboriginal. And she stands up and raves and rants and says, you've taken my land. You're victimising me. You're killing me. When she has had 90% of wealth all her life. I'd like her to explain where she has been disadvantaged. I can't see it ever. But like you said, this, I'll call the podcast, this video I've made is going to make people really, really angry. And I'm hoping they're not angry. I hope they listen to it. And I hope, like hell, they all go, shit, we've gone too far. We've gone too far in everything. Too far in letting kids do what they want. Too far in crime, in drugs, in taking money, pilfering from the government, thinking the government's there for us, thinking what's next for me, only caring about me, couldn't give a shit about the neighbour, couldn't give a shit about anybody or anything. Now, has our society always been pure? No. But I can guarantee you, I got family members that I can ask them, and I know people in my family, and I'll call them family, where their parents worked out in the goddamn middle of New South Wales as stockmen and had nothing. But in their community, they helped each other. They were all the same and they loved it. Now, couldn't care less. Next door neighbour they wouldn't know if you're dead in your house, mate. Or care. We have to start finding a way to be civil. Now, last night on, I can't think what show it was on Sky News. Now, there was a priest, well, I don't think he's a priest, I don't know what you call him, he was an Anglican minister. He has the collar, of course, because they still wear the collar like a Catholic priest. And there was a Jewish guy, and I don't know whether he was a minister or what he was, what they call them, and they were being interviewed. Now, this will make you laugh, so when the Palestinians were down at the Opera House screaming, gas the Jews, or where are the Jews, or where they were doing, this Anglican priest came out of the Anglican Cathedral in Sydney just to see and watch what was going on. A mob of Palestinians started setting upon him and threatened to kill him. A goddamn Catholic, a Christian guy, and they chased him. So he ran up the street as fast as he could and hid behind some police cars and some police officers. He said last night he felt they would have killed him. He has nothing to do with the Jewish issue, but they still did it because they didn't care less. That mob didn't care less what you are. They were there to create disunity, hatred, and carry on. Not all of them, but a mob of them. Now we need to take to those people seriously and do something with it. But not just them. Anybody that does that, we've got to stop being soft and go, oh, well, you know, that caused because 50 years ago, or that. No. I hate the word that everyone uses now, it's un-Australian. I think that term is bullshit, but in this one instance, I say it is. It's not what Australians aspire to be, the average bloke in the street. And we need to go, we are not tolerating that. And we say to our politicians, stop with your garbage, stop with your carry-on, stop squandering money, get together, even if just for once. The two parties get together and say, what can we do in the next 10 years to make our nation great again? Because if you don't, you're going to end up like America, where you've got two morons fighting over their own stupid, their own powerful crap, and divide the nation where they want to bash each other in the street because they belong to a different political party. Right now, we've only got a bit of skirmishing between religions and race. Imagine if all of a sudden Liberal people started wanting to bash people in the street because you're Labor, or you're Green, or you're a Teal, or vice versa. My word, then we are in deep trouble. America's already there. Now just imagine what could happen next election if one of those two win. Are the Democrats going to accept defeat if Donald Trump wins? Are the Republicans going to accept defeat if he gets turfed out again? And we all know no. We know the Democrats, Biden will say, Trump's now cheated. Trump's robbed us. He's a dictator, he's this. If Biden wins, Donald Trump's going to say the same thing. They robbed us again. They cheated again. So now their country's divided between the two leaders who are going to ramp up hatred for political parties. Now, if you're not frightened of that and not concerned about that, then you're a moron. Because we need to make sure that actually does not come here. But it's not far away. It's not far away at all. You know, and I listen to a whole range of media. I watch ABC, and right now they shit me. Because all they do now, they don't report, they don't do investigative journalism, they just dictate to us. They just give us their view. I watch Paul Murray and all the Sky News. Sometimes Paul Murray's clear. He said this is a, what's he called? This is an opinion show. So, okay, I accept that because he says it's an opinion show. But he is those guys, and I quite like that show, right? But he's extremely on the right wing. Well, he's not extreme right, but he's pushing the agenda for the Liberals. Fair enough. But he is smart enough. He has on his show, he has Labor supporters and he has Liberal supporters. He has a mix of people come on to debate his issues. So he's got an opinion, but he's decent enough to bring on both sides, and he'll listen to the argument. Sometimes they squabble and talk over each other, but they do listen. You go to some of the other channels, same thing. You go, They own, and there's this new world now called this narrative. My God, it's like a home invasion, road rage. It's just bullshit. Road rage is when people violently bash you up on the road. Home invasion when some scum comes into your house and bashes you. Well, we want to dim that down. This is the same in politics. As you go, you know, they have all this narrative crap. That is, they only want to speak about their view. I do not want my journalists giving me their opinion. I want the journalists of this nation, like they used to, actually go investigate. Are they meant to not have a view? Of course they do. They're human, but they must keep their view to themselves when they're reporting. I want them to investigate and bring me the truth as best they can do it or know it. I don't want to turn my news on and get filled full of political bullshit all the time. It's what both sides do. I saw it last night at Classic. Jacinta Price was on the telly and I was asking her questions. That lady has not come up through the political machine. She was talking like a normal person and answering the question directly what was asked of her. Half an hour later, they had a Labor bloke on, right? Just happened to be Labor. And they asked him about, I can't even remember what they asked him. He waffled on for 5 minutes and never addressed the question. Same happened. So our modern day politicians, they don't. They talk bullshit around and around and around because they don't want to be caught telling the truth. Now, if they're not truthful with us and we can't trust them, which is what's happening now. Everyone's saying we can't trust Albanese. We can't trust our Prime Minister. Now, whether he just had a change of heart, but that guy told us 100 so many times he wasn't going to touch nothing of the third wave of tax cuts. He wasn't going to do this, he wasn't going to do that. And now he's doing it. So, of course, now the tax cuts, he said right up to a week before, no, he wasn't going to do anything. But then a week later, he brings out this new package. They must have been working on that for 3 or 4 months because there's no way they can put together that new package in a week. So, of course, he is a liar. Not changing the package. I don't care about the package. I'm happy. He's a politician. They changed it. He was lying that he said he was not going to do it while he was doing it. He was misleading us for months. Now, that's just a tax thing. Just about getting some more money. If he's going to lie about that to make his own arse look good, he's going to lie about everything. Now, is he the only one in Parliament plays that game? Of course not. The Teals do it, the Greens do it, Liberal do it. They all bloody do it. And what do? We try and take a factional side. I'm a Liberal, I'm a Labor, I'm a Green, I vote for the Teals. Doesn't matter. They're all the same. We need to start demanding better of them. We need better of our politicians. Anyway, I've been going for an hour and a half. I had thought about going for 2 hours, but I don't know. Now, something's going to happen. I'm going to put this on my Facebook and I'm going to get 1 review, or I'm going to get nothing, or I'm going to get 1 million. I hope it's 1 million, and I hope I have 1 million comments. I hope I have people on both sides. I'm happy for them to tell them I'm a dickhead. You're talking through your arse, mate. I'm happy to hear, yes, you've got a view, mate, and your view's correct, and we've got to do something. I don't care. I actually just hope we get a conversation going. I hope there's plenty of people that have got the guts to actually come out and start to, I don't care if it goes viral, at least we're going to start having a conversation in our community. We don't have it now. We all go, social media. 40 years ago, we had a landline telephone and that was it. We were able to rally, go right back to the 70s. I don't know. Phones, there would have been a landline in probably every second or third house. They were able to rally hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people to march in George Street against the Vietnam War. Ask yourself, how did that happen? How did that happen? How did they get that? How did those people get together? And why were they so vocal and willing to go out and put their hands up like that? Here we are, 50 years later. We have the most sophisticated communication system in the world, and we can't raise 20 people to go and demonstrate on the bank of the river because some bastard's bulldozing it. I live at Windsor, and I'm happy they built the new bridge, right? But there was plenty of people wasn't, and I respect their theory. They couldn't even raise enough people to come there. When they had that issue about the foundation, they should have been able to goddamn lock Windsor up. but we couldn't do it. We're full of apathy, for left or right. But on the left, they are now we're not talking about the people on the left that just want to save that foundation or save that tree or save that. They are reasonably good people with a bit more of a social view. I've got a respect for them. I've got family that are a bit different to me, and I respect them because they are doing good. But the extreme left that want to tear down everything, tear down our institutions, make children be what they want to be, destroy them when they're 15, so by the time they're 30, they don't have a life. They're all full of drugs, or they've changed their sex, and then they're sorry about it, and you can't do nothing about it. We are letting our next generation down big time. And that's not saying that I'm a homophobe or I'm a moron no. I'm just saying we need to take care of our children and let them, when they're adults, decide for themselves. But hands off the children. But we can't now because we've gone too far. But unless we decide to do something about it and get some serious conversations going in our street and in our homes, around our dinner tables, instead of just having snippets, reels, like little reels here and little reels there and stuff, it's garbage. I know when some of my friends are going to listen to this and they are going to cringe. Then they go, he's a lunatic. He's just raving, ranting, raving. What a moron. I know they're going to do it, and I'm fair enough because they're not going to want to be associated with me. But I hope they are. I really hope after you listen to this, and the sad thing, they'll probably only hear the first 5 minutes and cut off. So I'll make sure when I post this up, I'm going to write a serious article about why it is. So to give it a bit of time and try to watch it. Now I understand there's only going to be 1%, if that will be interested in anyway. But I'm hoping 1% will go to 2%. I hope. Because I really would like to see Australians start to have a serious debate about what we want Australia to look like tomorrow. Not about left, not about right, not about greens, not about teals, not about cutting down trees, not about the whole thing. Especially about wealth distribution, opportunities, success, privilege, all those things for everybody. I want us to stop being divisive and negative. Every time we come to the thing, we run down hospitals, we run down the government, we run down Aborigines. Aborigines run us down. You are planting negative, hatred things in your mind which you cannot escape. We still live in one of the best nations in the world, and we are trying our arse off to say we are living with the devil in hell. I don't get it. Is everything perfect? Of course not. But by Christ, it's far from rat shit. I certainly hope that I get something going. But anyway, that's it from me. It's been an hour and 40 minutes, so I know nobody's going to watch that. Nobody's going to listen to it. Everyone's going to say, you're crackers, mate. Anyway, to those who do listen, thank you very much. See, I'll be watching with interest to see if it goes viral or not, and we can't get people talking. See ya.